All right, guys, it's Zach here with Handmade Hero Academy, and I wanted to talk with you today. And I have brought on a special friend and mentor of mine that has created a multi-million-dollar business selling handmade antler chandeliers. Like, you would never think in a million years that antler chandeliers, you could create such a big business with that. But Shaun Baker has been a really good friend of mine, has been such an incredible mentor to me, has taught me so much about business and life and faith and family. And so what I wanted to do is we wanted to give you tons of value today, and I'm going to ask him some questions, and we're just going to have a conversation and to give you as much help as possible as you either start your business or maybe you have your business started and you want to take it to new levels. And so, Shaun, what's up, man?
Not much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you. So we'll just jump into it and have a conversation. So before we get into business, before we get into strategies and all these things, just tell us a little bit about like where it all started for you. Like, where did you grow up?
Sure.
Were you born into a family of entrepreneurs?
Sure.
Do you have a college degree? Tell us a little bit about just how you got started as being an entrepreneur.
Sure. Well, I absolutely did not grow up into a family of entrepreneurs. I grew up in a middle-class family, and my dad worked in the oil and gas field here in East Texas. And, I going into college, really didn't know what kind of degree I wanted to get. In hindsight, looking back on it, I wish I would have got a degree in business, but I didn't. I got a degree in education. And,
so what was your specific degrry?
Sure, it was kinesiology. Yeah.
Okay.
And, the study of movement. And I was thinking I was going to go into coaching and teaching, and that didn't happen. And moving on, graduated from college, and, whenever I was entering into the workforce, starting off, I had briefly worked for a guy who built antler furniture, and I worked for him for around 6 months before starting at a company, Marshall Life Center. Worked there as an exercise specialist for about 6 months, and all along the while, I couldn't really get my mind off the antler lighting and furniture industry and the potential that it had. And,
cool.
So I guess it was in or around March 2003. I was dating my wife. We were getting ready to get married, and we went ahead and took a leap of faith and hopped out there and started a business. And
wow.
It was interesting and scary, and we didn't really know what to expect, but it was a great decision.
That's awesome, man. So real quick, so you have a college degree, but it has nothing to do with your business, right?
That's right, yeah.
And you didn't come from a bunch of money, and you didn't come from a long line of entrepreneurs or anybody that taught you how to do any of this stuff, right?
That's right. Not at all.
Yeah. So you basically just kind of figured it out along the way.
That's exactly. We dove in head first and had no clue.
Yeah. So you've been doing it how long now?
17 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 17 years he's been at this, guys. Yeah. And so I'm going to assume that means you've made a lot of mistakes. you figured a lot of stuff out the hard way.
Absolutely.
And so what we want to do is we want to help you along the way. And that's why we're doing this interview, is just to give you some sight into the fact that you don't have to have a bunch of money. You don't have to have parents that were entrepreneurs or know a lot. Like, you don't have to go to college for 4 years and get a degree in business. Guys, you can start this no matter whatever phase of life you're in. And it's really funny because I actually have the same degree that you do.
Really?
And so I have a degree in kinesiology and haven't used it a day in my life. And it's just funny because, everyone sells college, and college is not a bad thing necessarily, but it's not... you don't have to know when you're 21, 22 years old exactly what you're going to do your whole life. And so just want to encourage you guys with that. So real quick, so tell me about so you started this business, right? And so what was your first action? What was the very first thing that you did to try to get some momentum with your antler chandeliers?
Well, I'd say, one of the first things that we did is we built a website.
Okay.
And had a website built. It was a company out of Tampa, Florida at the time that was building sites. Now, this was before the days of Shopify and all the big platforms that where you can build your own.
Yeah.
And we had that done, and then The next thing we did is we went to the Dallas market. We set up for our very first market, our very first show.
Okay.
That's a show where stores, they come in and they look at your product and decide whether or not they want to incorporate that into their own store, their own line, retail stores. And
cool.
So the Dallas market was a huge reason for the success of our business. I felt like that was where we really started gaining some momentum before we stepped out there and started going to other markets like the Atlanta market and the Vegas market. That was kind of the staple or the, I guess, the foundation of our company.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So if you're not familiar, which most people aren't, and so you have retailers that are storefronts, which the end consumer would walk in and buy, like a Walmart or a Target or furniture stores or lighting stores or any of these things. And so what Shaun did was that he went to the market. And so there's one in Dallas, there's one in Atlanta, there's one in High Point, North Carolina, there's one in Las Vegas, there's one in Denver. Isn't there a Denver market?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so what happens is so he actually set up his business as a wholesaler first instead of a retailer. So he wasn't selling to the end consumer, he was selling to the person that would then sell it to the end consumer. And so just tell me a little bit like why, and so that's not necessarily the main thing that I'm teaching, but
Sure.
Tell me why that was so foundational for your business. What was so important about going that route?
Sure. Well, I felt like that was the part of our business that really created the cash flow.
Okay.
It's and the cash flow. Whenever you have the cash flow, and that's kind of the engine behind your company.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden, from that point forward, you have to start figuring out, where to put this money and how to budget your money, and
right.
And how you pay taxes, and if you hire an employee, you have your 941 tax. You have all the different taxes that you have to pay, and I just feel like that the markets themselves were the foundation that allowed us to start having to figure out how to run a business, because again, we didn't have a business degree, and
right.
There was a lot of bumps in the road that was soon to come, really in the first half of the 17 years in business.
Right, right. So when you got started, were you just a one-man show doing all this? Did you have somebody helping you in the shop? Did you have somebody helping you run the books? Talk to me about that. Was it just you and your wife, or did you bring on another person as soon as possible? How did that work?
I tell you what, just as soon as we hit about 70,000 in sales, which is not for the year, which is not a whole lot. At that point, I hired one of my roommates from college. He came in and he was willing to come and work for me at around $10 an hour.
Right.
And he was my first employee.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Cool.
From that point forward, I remember reaching out to a CPA after our first year in business, and she was kind of explaining to me, how once you hire somebody, if they're punching a clock, they have to pay employee, or I have to pay employee tax on them, and so she taught me a little bit about sales tax and kind of how that works, and
right.
If it's a retail sale, you would have to pay in sales tax. If it was a wholesale sale, then you would have to get the sales tax information from the person that you were selling to.
Right.
And so that was kind of, I guess, year one, and and diving in there and learning a little bit about the cash flow situation, the tax situation, how to hire an employee, how to handle that employee, and whatnot.
So if for somebody that's wanting to, their goal is because we're going to have people watching this video that they just want to make an extra $1,000 a month, right? We're also going to have people watching this video that they want to quit their 9-to-5 job. They want to start a legit company. They want to scale it to $1 million a year. Mm-hmm. Is there any way possible that you could have done $1 million a year for the last several years by yourself? Would you recommend that? Or what would you recommend?
Absolutely not. No, it's so one of the ways that you kind of scale your company, it is you can do it little by little, or you can kind of go all in if you have like from an investment opportunity. If you had like an outside investor that was pumping money in. So I certainly didn't have an outside investor, and so I had to do a little bit baby steps, a little at a time, and you don't go out and hire 2 or 3 employees on day one. You know, it's all contingent upon what your cash flow is. And so you can start off with just doing one show. And and once you get comfortable, so one market if you were going to go into the wholesale industry, or you could start off with just putting a little bit of money towards marketing for your website, and just grow it, you know, like 1 month at a time. And as you're comfortable and you feel like you can produce that one table or that one chandelier, that one light, then you might take it to the next level and spend a little bit more money.
Right.
Maybe go to 2 shows that year or 3 shows the following year. And so it's very important to scale, because the last thing you want to do is you don't want to get out there and over leverage yourself with a bunch of business and then not be able to produce. And so that's a vital part of business, is the way you scale it.
Right. So basically you would drive your sales up to a point where it was starting to get uncomfortable for just you, right? Mm-hmm. And then you would bring on another employee.
That's correct, yes.
Right.
That's
and
exactly right.
So you didn't do it the other way. You didn't bring on an employee and then try to generate sales to keep them busy.
No.
It was the other way around.
No, that's a recipe for failure. You're exactly right.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
You have to make sure that your cash flow is your most important thing in business.
Right.
It's got to support what you're doing on the other side.
Gotcha.
So that's right. That's the model you want to really adopt and own. And and that's what I had to do. And you know, from a baby step standpoint.
Yeah.
And because I certainly didn't have anybody who was willing to come in and invest in me, because I was a brand new entrepreneur.
Right.
And so that was you know, the recipe for a successval model for me.
Awesome. So guys, we're actually sitting in Shaun's backyard. He was kind enough to let me come over, take over his house for about an hour and a half as we worked through this interview. So if you hear sprinklers coming on, if you hear the pool coming on, that's what you're hearing. And so now you started this handmade business, right? So you're making these antler chandeliers. Surely you had to put up just tons of money right out of the gate to buy all kinds of fancy equipment, and you had to go buy a shop and you had to go do all this stuff, right? Or how did that? Or was it pretty easy to start?
No, yeah, it was pretty easy to start. Actually, I started off in a garage.
Okay.
And you know, so I certainly wasn't going out there and renting a multi-million-dollar facility that I couldn't afford. And you know, but we started off in a garage, and once we got our cash flow, about 6 months into the process, we felt comfortable enough and felt like we had enough business to actually do a month-to-month rent with the guy, where we were paying about $800 a month.
Okay.
And he was kind enough to allow us to rent a small warehouse from him.
Okay.
We paid month-to-month for the first year and a half in business. And I felt like for us, that was a very wise move. And whenever I look back on that time, if we had locked into a high retail district rent that was costing $4,000 or $5,000 a month, it would have destroyed our company. And so we were just doing month to month, very conservative.
Right.
We were, you know, and so that just is another way to be conservative in how you're scaling your business.
Right.
And so yeah, that was a smart decision.
So you've talked about cash flow, and you've talked about how that is so important, right? And so if you don't have cash flow, and what he means by cash flow is that there's consistent revenue coming into the business each and every month. And the reason that he chose the wholesale market is because it actually is much more consistent than retail. Now,
and less competitive.
Yeah, it's less competitive as well. And so now, as you started to grow, like what strategies did you use to grow? I know you talked about shows. So does that mean that you were just going to more, you're getting in front of more people? Like if you could give somebody one single strategy when they're brand new baby business to start getting out there and start making 6 figures a year in business, what would that be?
You know, having a website is absolutely vital to your lifeline. It's important to have a reference point. You might not be selling a whole lot, but it's important that people can go and look at your product on that website. Also, another thing that we did above and beyond the shows is we would just pick up the phone and call people. And, you know, you can't be afraid to call your demographic or your target market and explain to them what you're doing. Send them to your website You can also set up a MailChimp and or a Constant Contact account online. And as you are, it's another way to drive people to your website. It's another way to increase sales. Later on in business, really the second half of the 17 years, we started incorporating the Constant Contact and the MailChimp platforms into our normal business model.
Right.
And
so what is that exactly?
So what happens is you create a data. It's a platform where you can load email addresses, and you load the email addresses, and once a month you can do like a promotional type event that you have. It might be. There's all kinds of reasons to have sales. It could be like the 4th of July sale. It could be a Labor Day sale. It could be. It's just a way to get your name out there and to constantly reach out there and touch the people that might have come by your booth at the show. It might be somebody that you reached out to, you called, and it could be just somebody that you got a hold of on the phone, and or a referral that you got, and you got their email address, so you add them to your MailChimp or Constant Contact platform.
Okay, cool.
And so it's a neat way to send out promotions and increase sales.
Yeah. So what I guess the main thing that I want to get across to you, the viewer, is that you have to have more than one avenue to get in front of people, because I think Shaun would agree with me that the more eyeballs that can see your product or your service, the more chances you have to sell it, right? And I think that's so huge, is that a lot of the times we start our business and we're not great at what we do yet necessarily. Mm-hmm. And so we keep it restricted. We don't show as many people as we should.
That's right.
And the more people you show, the more feedback you're going to get on what's good and what's not good. The more feedback you're going to get, and the more sales you're going to get. And so we've talked a little bit about how you started. We talked about how you focus on growth and how you increase sales. Mm-hmm. And so let me just real quick, and we don't necessarily have to go into this, but I think it's kind of cool for the viewer to hear this. And so your first year of business, do you remember what your total sales were?
I want to say in year one we did around $70,000 to $75,000 in our first year.
And it was all out of your garage at that point?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yeah, it was that for at least the first 6 months, and then we stepped out there and we did go ahead and do that month-to-month lease on the second half of that year.
And it gave you more space. It gave you more room to work.
It did.
Right.
But we still just had one employee.
Right.
So year one was just, and that was after about 3 or 4 months into it that I hired that one employee.
Gotcha. So let's talk about year two. How did that look as far as sales?
Year two, we incorporated about 3 more shows. So we did 4 shows in year two.
Okay.
In year two, we did about $275,000 in sales.
Okay, wow. So you went from 70 to 275 in 1 year.
Yeah, so we jumped up there pretty good.
Right.
And one thing that's interesting is I had to, I think it was year 2, is whenever we had somebody start coming in part-time.
Okay.
So we had a second employee come in that was a part-time employee.
Okay.
And he came in and would come in and just help us design product and drill out product and just help us on the production side of things.
Right.
And towards the latter part of that year is whenever we hired him full time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So now this is something that people, I think, is a really practical thing that people need to hear. So when you go to hire an employee, and hey, I'm going to pay this employee X amount of dollars an hour, or they're going to get X amount of dollars per year. Mm-hmm. How much do they need to be able to produce for it to be worth? Like, say if you're hiring them into production, they're actually going to be back there building the product.
Sure.
If you know, hey, I'm going to pay this person $30,000 a year or $25,000 a year, what kind of multiplier do they need to be able to produce, or what factors do you need to know in order to figure that out?
Mm-hmm. Well, your profit margins. Yeah.
Right.
That's a huge deal in business. A lot of people they don't understand profit margins, but you have to figure out exactly how much you have that product. And if, for the sake of math, if you have $100 in something, you in the wholesale industry, I always like to double it. So I want to sell that for $200.
Right.
And in retail, I like to sell it for $300. So
right.
It's really some people call doubling something keystone. So it's really just, a lot of it is it's contingent upon your overhead.
Right.
So, if you're out there, and that's why I say it's important to scale your business based off of cash flow and the amount of employees you have. And
right.
There's lots of variables, and you have to make sure that if you're selling something for $100, that you don't have $150 in it.
Right.
That's definitely a whole other deep conversation that you can get into from a profit margin standpoint.
Right.
But you definitely want to make sure that your overhead, that whatever you're selling that product for, exceeds your overhead. Otherwise,
right.
You're not going to make any money,
right.
and you're going to be in a losing battle.
So when we're talking about overhead, are we just talking about labor costs and material costs?
Yeah, you also have it. You have to figure everything from the electricity.
That's right.
You have to look at what you're paying your employees. You have to look at your wear and tear on your all your
equipment,
tools, equipment,
right.
And so there's lots of variables whenever it comes to overhead. Anything that's costing you money out of pocket in order to produce that product
is your
overhead.
Right. Right. And so I've included in my course, which you'll hear more about in the future, a free document that gives you all the tools you need to be able to calculate this. And I think Shaun would agree with me that if you don't know what it costs to produce something, you are wandering around in the dark as a business. And you can think you're rocking and rolling and you're making all this money, but you have no idea on what it is actually costing you to produce the products that you sell. And you're thinking you're making $200 or $300, $500 for everything that you sell, and you're making half of that, or you're making a quarter of that, and you're just spinning your wheels at that point. You know, someone once told me, son, you can go poor sitting on the couch.
That's exactly right.
And so if you are out there working, you want to make sure that your profit margins are good enough that you know, hey, this is how much money I'm making every time I sell one of these. Yeah. And so we've included that free in our course. So some other questions I got for you. And so you look at, and I have a ton of respect for you. You have grown this with blood, sweat, and tears. And so when you look at, okay, what are the top 5 things that I did as a business owner and just as a person, whether it be daily disciplines or whether it be, your relationships, networking, what are the top 5 things that you would contribute to your success from taking a business out of your garage until now, you're producing over $1 million in gross income, gross revenue every year?
Absolutely. First of all, a lot of praying. So I definitely would seek the Lord in prayer and ask for wisdom. Nonstop.
Right.
And so I just want to start with that.
Yeah.
But I feel like that I have a big heart in my refusal to fail. That's a big deal. I'm not willing to accept failure as an option.
Yeah.
And I think if you can adopt the mentality of not accepting failure as an option, I feel like that gives you the ability to persevere. And, so next, I would say I was never afraid to seek counsel. And I would always go out to people who were smarter than me in business, which was most everybody. And
that's how it is when you start.
Yeah, and I would ask, and I would be like, look, what do you think about this? How about this? This is how much I did in sales. This much. How can I increase my sales? My marketing.
Right.
I would constantly lean on people who were more successful than me.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
And
for sure.
If I wouldn't have done that, I never would have made it this far. And
that's good. That's a nugget.
No doubt about it. I would also say, I had a lot of support, so the people around me, that's another thing. You're seeking counsel, but you're also surrounding yourself with a certain amount of people. I always like to say you're an average of the top 5 people you hang around. I'm living proof of that. And, you have to surround yourself with people who are going to be supportive, and you have to surround yourself with people who are going to encourage and love and help you on every angle. And my wife is one of those people.
Right.
And so that's she's a huge part of my success. I also want to throw something out in regards to my wife. Whenever I was first starting and didn't have much money coming in, she was also willing to go out there and pick up an extra shift. She's a nurse, and she helped me in our humble beginnings. And I definitely want to give credit where credit is due. And so it's always helpful to have people in your circle that are supportive. And then I guess the fifth thing, if I were just to jump out there and say one of the fifth thing, I guess just that, gosh, my drive is huge. Getting up every morning, starting your morning right, and knowing, hey, I'm going to go out and have the mindset that you're going to go out and set these goals, and you're going to achieve those goals. So your drive and determination.
Yeah, it's huge. And so that's awesome, man. So let's talk about a little bit about this is always kind of hard to bring these up and think about these. It can be kind of funny too, but let's talk about some of your biggest failures, man.
Yeah.
Where did you screw up? Where did you go wrong? What if you could look back in business and say, man, I shouldn't have made that decision. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Or just some stories about where things were hard, things were tight.
I guess in the beginning, I remember whenever I would be at shows and people would walk in, and I really didn't know I really wasn't polished whenever it comes to talking to people.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to do sales. I didn't know how to speak to people, and I'd have customers come into the booth and they'd be talking about a certain kind of antler that was in the booth, and I would jump on them and be quick to tell them, hey, that's not what that is, and I almost like I was just being almost disrespectful.
Yeah.
So that I remember in the beginning losing a bunch of sales because I didn't learn proper etiquette.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah.
With my sales approach. And
right.
I remember that being an issue, especially early on. And and then I think back to the first few years and our taxes, and learning how that's a scary thing, because you don't want to get yourself in a bind with your taxes and understanding, hey, that was a retail sale. I was supposed to pay sales tax in. If you want to shut your doors really quickly, don't pay sales tax in. That'll shut your business down real quick.
Right.
You have to make sure you're paying Uncle Sam and the state that you live in their sales tax.
Yeah.
And that's that was a very big learning experience in the beginning.
Right.
And then I also want to go back to we did a lot of stuff on paper. We had paper receipts, paper this. Our bookkeeping was absolutely pathetic. And and so
yes.
I look back in hindsight, and it is just like wow, how did we even, we were running a business in the dark. So at the end of the day, or the end of the month or end of the year, if you made $10,000, that's great. But if you spent $11,000, then you went in the hole $1,000. And so we didn't really know whether we were coming or going in the beginning.
Yeah.
And so we were running a business in the dark, is what I call it, because we couldn't see any of the numbers, because we had stacks and stacks of papers everywhere. So we finally got smart, and we put everything in QuickBooks to where you could code everything, read a P&L statement at the end of the month, and realize, hey, look, I actually made a little bit of money this month instead of losing. And it's important to know where you are whenever you're scaling your business, whenever you are trying to figure in profit margins. You really need to understand where you are. And putting everything in QuickBooks allowed us to see that. And those were three of the biggest mistakes that really stand out to me.
Yeah. So one thing that you guys need to know as you move forward is that you don't have to know everything right now. But you do need to learn how to keep up with your numbers. You do need to learn taxes. You do need to learn those things. And here's the thing. If you don't want to learn those things, if you're just like, hey, I'm great at making a product and I'm great at selling it, and I'm terrible at books, that's kind of how I am, then I encourage you to go find a CPA, go find a bookkeeper.
Absolutely.
How much is a bookkeeper per month? Like if you're just starting out, like you let's say you're making $10,000 to $15,000 a month with your product.
Sure. You could have a bookkeeper come in. The amount transactions is going to be pretty minimal. If on a 10 or 15,000 a month, you could have a bookkeeper come in for just a few hours a month and do everything you need to do.
Right.
And that might cost you $100-$150.
Right.
Yeah,
so it doesn't cost hardly anything.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot of money, and also lots of people are willing to step out there and help you. And I would also encourage your listeners to understand that they can reach out to somebody who owns a business.
Yeah.
And more often than not, they're willing to help you.
Right.
And,
right.
And help you from a bookkeeping standpoint, from giving you a little bit of advice.
Right. Right. Awesome. So, okay. So we're gonna start trying to wrap this thing up for you guys, and I just want to give you some insight, some value as far as somebody that's done it, somebody that has spent the last 17 years building a business with their own bare hands, and so I guess we'll have a few more questions, but for someone just starting out, for somebody that they're sick and tired of their 9-to-5 job, like they hate their job, or they look and they see that it's a dead end. Like, hey, I make $35,000 a year, and next year I might get a 2 or 3% raise, and I might make an extra $1,000. Or like give me one or two of just the best tips that you would give somebody that they have a passion to start and they just don't know what to do or how to do it.
I think one of my biggest tips would be, a lot of people they're afraid. They're afraid of the unknown, and they're already kind of defeated in their own mindset. And I just want to encourage you in the fact that you can do it, and you can do way more than what you realize. And if you have the will, there's absolutely a way.
Yeah.
And and if you're just to take the leap of faith, because I'm a big believer in there's no reason to have any regrets at the end of our life.
Yeah.
And I believe that if you have that fire and that drive, you can overcome, you can persevere,
right,
and you can absolutely make it happen. And, that would be kind of my big, just go for it.
Right.
Jump in head first, because that's the best way. I call it the school of hard knocks. It's the best way to figure it out, and it's the best way to make things happen. And I think a lot of people they're crippled by their fear. Yeah. And and it's important to not allow the unknown to scare you out of hopping out there and stepping away from that, and stepping into entrepreneurship, and stepping away from that 9-to-5 job.
Right.
And so
for sure.
It's exciting. It really is. Every day is a roller coaster, and it's exciting, and life's lessons are huge, and you're always gonna have, no matter what you do in life. I don't care if you stay at your 9-to-5 job, you're always gonna have blood, sweat, and tears. But I would encourage everybody to chase their dreams. Yeah. And because that's one of the reasons why we're here. Yeah. So it's just go for it.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, and I'll just to add to that, guys, I would dare to say, like, the hardest part about the society that we live in is that we go to school, and school teaches us to be great employees. Honestly, we go and we listen to a teacher tells us what to do, and we do it. We go to college, they tell us what to do, and we do it. The thing about entrepreneurship that most people really struggle with is that you don't have anybody telling you what to do. Like,
that's right.
you jump out there and you start a business, and there are 1,000 things that you could do, right?
That's right.
You could have gone to market. Mm-hmm. You could have gone. You could have started an online business where you're just trying to sell everything online. Mm-hmm. You could have started a storefront. You could have done this. You could have done that. And guys, you only have X amount of hours a day, right? You only have so much time. And so how do you know what to focus on? Like, how do you know what the most important thing is? And this is a principle I actually teach, and it's doing the things that have high value. It's a high value activity, And so really in the early phases of your business, you need to focus on the things that produce money. Yeah. If you're not focusing on the things that produce revenue, if you're not focused on the things that produce sales, guys, you're kind of spinning your wheels. And another thing that we talked about just a second ago, and just to add some value to our viewers, to our listeners, is we talked about bookkeeping. We talked about all these different things that people need to know, right? And And one concept that I want us to all kind of wrap our mind around is the fact that you don't necessarily have to know how to do everything in your business as long as you know who can do that thing in your business.
That's
right. Like,
absolutely.
Like for me, I have no desire, none, zip, zilch, nada, no desire at all to run my books, to sit behind a computer and handle the accounting. I actually made really good grades all throughout school. The only C I ever made in my life was in accounting in college, and I despise it. So I have no desire to do it, and so I can rack my brain and I can try to figure out how to do all this stuff. Or I can figure out how to make an extra $150 a month, which is what I'm actually good at, and pay a bookkeeper to do it for $150 a month.
Sure.
Right?
And I want to just interject something.
Yeah.
Determining and understanding what you're best at is an important thing.
Right.
Just because I'm great at sales doesn't mean that I'm a great bookkeeper.
Yeah.
So it's important, and I can see that you've identified that in your own life. And just knowing what you're good at and really capitalizing on your strengths, that's huge.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
No doubt. When it comes to entrepreneurship and doing what you're best at and then delegating the things that you're terrible at, that's another recipe for success.
Right. And so when it comes to delegation and you start your business and when you first start, guys, you're going to be the one that's in the shop. You're going to be the one that's making the product, that's selling the product, that's doing all these things. What's the best way? What's the best process for delegation? Is it just kind of like word of mouth, or is it better to have stuff written down, or like how when I bring my first employee on, when I'm like, hey, I want to grow this thing. Mm-hmm. What's the best way to get that information to that employee so that we set them up for success and so that we don't have to worry about them?
Sure. I definitely want to mentor them and through the process. If it's a production line, for example, you definitely want to hands-on, get in there and showing them, the process step by step. That way they're it's an extension of you.
Right.
So you want to make sure it's the same quality as what you would do.
Yes.
And so I think there needs to be a level of mentorship with that new employee in order to train them and so that they can mimic the same process that you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
That's huge.
Right. Yeah. And so, and I'm just going to add this, and this is kind of funny just to say this because it didn't sound very good, but I always assume that they're going to fail miserably.
Right.
Like, I believe the best about them, and I hired them based on their potential, right?
Sure.
But I always assume, at least for about the first month, that they have no idea what they're doing. Mm-hmm. They don't know. They've never built the things that I've built, that I'm building. They don't know how to look at something and know if it is the quality that we want it to be, the standard that we want it to be. So I have made a lot of mistakes with throwing someone in there, showing them real quick what to do, and believing the best. Just believing that they're going to make it happen, right? And it bites me in the rear end every single time. Yes. And so guys, I would say, I would say definitely what Shaun mentioned about mentorship and you being there every step of the way as you bring on your first employee and showing them exactly what to do. But even something else that I would add to that is to document the process. Mm-hmm, sure. Like, because when you do it, you probably never have a need to document the process. It's all in your mind. You know exactly what to do. But how cool would it be if you had a way that when you brought on a new employee, instead of having to spend 80 hours with that employee training them, you can only spend 20 hours because you could hand them something that showed them exactly what to do.
Absolutely.
Whether it be pictures, whether it be a step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this. And that way you can remove yourself faster from that training and actually get back to the things that you're great at doing, whether it be sales, whether it be marketing, whether it be the accounting. Maybe you're just the accountant and you go and you find a business partner that's the sales guy, whatever that may be. So I guess we can start wrapping everything up. Is there anything else that if somebody's about to start a business, if they've thought about it, if they've dreamed of it, or if they have already started their business and they're wanting to scale it, is there anything else that you can think, man, that would be valuable information for them to have?
Sure. Man, I just want to go back to what I said earlier about just surrounding yourself with people who are driven, surrounding yourself with people who are in business or have experience. Really lean on them for direction. And I feel like if you are willing to do that and seek the wisdom of others, you're going to be successful.
Yeah,
And,
that's awesome. Well, Shaun, man,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you for having me.
Enjoyed it. Yeah,
Always
thank you.
love it.
Yep.
And so, guys, we hope you've gotten a ton of value out of this video. And if you want more information about how to start your business, how to scale your business, I've created an in-depth course called Handmade Hero Academy, where you can actually go and we'll walk you step by step how to get started, the things to focus on, and actually how to do it. Instead of giving you a bunch of theory, a bunch of ideas, we'll actually show you how to get started, how to launch your business and get it up and running and scale it quickly. And so you can go to handmadeheroacademy.com to get more information about that, or you can go to zachvaught.com. But again, Shaun, thank you so much, man.
Enjoy being here.
I love you, brother. I appreciate you. And so, guys, take this and run with it, and we will see you soon.